UFC Fight Night Allen versus Craig just took place. I'm going to give you my breakdown of the fights, starting with the early prelim opener of Charles Johnson versus Rafael Estevam. Really dull fight. Well, the first two rounds were, at least. Estevam just wet blanketed Charles Johnson pretty much for the entire first two rounds. And eventually Charles Johnson gets a fire lit under him, starts piecing him up in round three. Was doing really well, but just not enough to put Estevam away. So Estevam won a 29-28 decision. Pretty dull. That might be it for Charles Johnson. That might be the last time we get to see his beautiful hair. As for Estevam, if he fights someone that can stuff takedowns, he's done. He's gonna get smoked. So, but he has time to improve though. He's what, like 28, I think. Okay, whatever. But yeah, he has some time to improve. So, whatever. Anyways, moving on to Trey Ogden versus Nicholas Mata. Oh my. Mike Beltran. What were you doing? Trey Ogden was pretty much dominating the fight with his jab and his takedowns. And in round three, he gets a really good position to submit Nicholas Mata. And Mike Beltran is just like hovering over the fighters, just like, show me a sign, Mata, show me a sign. He can't show you a sign when he's doing everything in his power to defend against the choke. And Trey Ogden, eventually Mike Beltran tells Trey Ogden to stop the fight because he thinks Mata's out, even when he's not. He's not out at all. He immediately protested. In Paul Felder was saying you can still tell that Mata was clearly still conscious. So really sucks for Trey Ogden. He was dominating that fight. He probably would have submitted him in that position. But due to a referee's mistake, he gets half his paycheck cut, and Nicholas Mata still has a chance at a career. So, man, I would be so pissed if I was Ogden. Anyway, on to Luchi Pudilova versus Aylin Perez. Did not watch this fight. It was a woman fight. I just skipped it. But Aylin Perez got the victory. So good for her. Oh, and now on to this Jekka Sergey versus Lucas Alexander. Lucas Alexander was putting the heat on Sergey. It was looking real sharp. He did miss weight by 2 pounds, but Sergey was getting pieced up, and then I don't know who got who to the ground, but as Alexander was getting up from the ground, he was spinning his back towards Sergey, and Sergey just lunges in with the right hand and cracks Alexander bad and finishes him with a ground and pound. And the ref has no choice but to step in. It was nasty. Such a fluke win, but man, it was dominant and ruthless. But really sucks for Lucas Alexander, but I mean, when you miss weight, it's hard to feel bad for someone. So, and Sergey lost to Molina. Oh, or not Molina. Jubilee. So that's a really bad look for Lucas Alexander. This fight card, my predictions were so bad. I went like 8-5-1 because so many weird fights, and then that one getting. I would have gone 9-5. Damn, Mike Beltran. But anyway, great win for Sergey. Sucks for Alexander, but moving on to the heavyweight bout of Mick Parkin versus Caio Machado. Possibly a robbery. When I watched it live, I didn't think so, but Inme Guru kind of thought Machado won. I'm okay with Parkin winning. There's an argument that Machado won the first and third based off damage, but Parkin had a lot of control time and takedowns. I think he did land the cleaner shots, it's just he had much less volume. So it's certainly a toss-up. But, yeah, super disappointing for Mick Parkin. He had, in his last fight against Pogues, he had good boxing fundamentals, good low kicks, and he just didn't show any of that tonight. He looked like a typical unranked middleweight. That's exactly what we got in this fight, a typical unranked middleweight, or unranked heavyweight fight. Really disappointing in Mick Parkin, or Mick Porkin as some call him, so pretty lame. Anyway, on to Christian Leroy Duncan getting a nasty TKO over Dennis Tulun. I mean, it was nasty. In the first round, he was clinching like a bitch. Super boring, super dull. We need ONE FC rules. But the ref, I think it was Mike Beltran again. Horrible job he did tonight. But he should have separated that in the clinch. He was just landing like, he landed good elbows every once in a while and good knees to the thigh. That was pretty much the entirety of the first round. But the second round, Christian Leroy Duncan takes it up a notch and starts piecing up Tulun. Tulun was firing back, but he was getting blasted with nasty shots, and he has such a great chin, until Duncan finally cracked it with an amazing combination with like a double elbow. Crazy combination. It was really awesome. I don't know how he didn't get a performance of the night bonus. But he needs to work on his fight IQ. You can tell he has that main character syndrome, kind of like Adesanya does, where he thinks he's like, oh yeah, this is the part where I'm gonna like wheel kick him or do some fancy like kick finish that's gonna be like a highlight. Just stick to the fundamentals. Sometimes you just need a 1-2 instead of like a hook kick, flick your jab, wheel kick. Like there's time to do that, as we saw in the Ribos fight, which I'll break down later. But you just gotta stick to the fundamentals, all right? The fundamentals are the fundamentals for a reason. So if you just, which he did a lot better in this fight than his last fight against Armen Petrosyan. If he's moving in the right direction, and that's a great sign. As for Dennis Tulun, you gotta call it quits at this point, man. He's old. He's like back. I think he just got knocked out by, or back to the head elbow finish by Gregory Rodriguez in his last fight. Just call it quits at this point, dude. You're 10-9, 35, I think. Just call it a wraps. Anyway, on to a very fun scrap. Chad Anheliger versus Jose Johnson. Very competitive fight. Kind of disappointing that Jose Johnson wasn't able to more effectively utilize his frame. The size difference was massive in this fight. I feel like he should have been able to use that to his advantage more than he did and get a more dominant victory. He still got the third round rear naked choke, which is really impressive, but still, with a guy that much smaller than you, that much older than you, you should be able to piece him up on the feet and get a better finish than he got. But not to take anything away from his performance, it was still a fun fight. Chad Anna Higer is definitely a Chad. He lived up to his name. Every round was competitive. Lots of good scrambles. Good submission attempts from both of them. But Jose Johnson eventually reversing the position in the third round, which Chad was controlling, but Jose was still kind of winning from striking off of his back, kind of like Oliveira does a lot, really effectively against Dariush. But eventually he reversed the position, got the rear naked choke with 11 seconds left, which sucks for Chad, but was he still had his moments. It was still a fun scrap. Jose gets it done. And then on to another pretty good fight. Jonathan Pierce versus Joanderson Brito. In the second round. First round was pretty close. I think you could give it to Pierce, but it doesn't really matter. It was a very close first round, very competitive. And in the second round, Pierce goes immediately to a takedown and controls Brito very effectively. Up until they were actually having a back and forth. Pierce told Herb Dean that he was getting hit in the back of the head, and then Brito goes like, nyang, 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 like mocking him. It was really weird. He did that like 2 or 3 times during the fight, during the second round. And then Pierce mocks him back and says, well, just get up, dude. And then like a minute later, Brito just sinks in like a ninja choke on Pierce, and Pierce has no choice to tap. It was nasty. Brito immediately takes his shorts off and starts like dancing around. Had a pretty Renato Moicano-esque moment on the mic. It was pretty funny. And he did end up getting the performance of the night bonus as well. There were 4 of them, which I think were all pretty well deserved as well. So, pretty solid prelims overall. Then on to the main card, Uros Medic versus Medibic Oral By, I think. Sucks for Medic, man. When I picked this fight, he was going to fight Johnny Parsons, which would have been, think about how much more fun that fight would have been. But instead, we got what Dagestani-esque, because I think he's from Uzbekistan or something like that. He looks like that Mongolian heritage people. But he has that Dagestani style of just wet blanketing you, and he did it really well against Uros Medic. Medic had a good first minute in the first round. He actually cut Orlbai open on his eyebrow, but other than that, Orlbai dominated with the control time. There's actually an argument that you could give Medic the first round on damage, because Orlbai didn't do any damage at all really in the first round, but he found the rear naked choke in the second round and submitted Medic. It was pretty sad to watch, but an impressive performance. I mean, I say impressive, but technically an impressive performance by Orlbai. And moving on to Luana Pinheiro versus Amanda Ribas. Great performance. Well, great finish for Amanda Ribas. She was kind of getting pieced up in the first round. I think it was her left eye was getting really busted up in the very first few minutes. It's kind of sad how quickly Ribas gets busted up, but she got tagged a lot in the first round. But Pinheiro kind of was just throwing haymakers like a absolute amateur, even though she's 31, has been doing MMA for years. and you're in the UFC, you're the number, what, 9 ranked strawweight in the UFC, and you're throwing haymakers like an amateur. This doesn't make sense. I just don't understand women's MMA, man. I just don't get it. But Pinheiro kind of just went all out in the first round, gassed, and Ribas just broke her in the second and continued to break her in the third. And then landing that amazing wheel kick. She was throwing it a lot to the body all throughout the fight, but eventually she took it up top and it landed nasty. And then she landed a 1-2 to back Pinheiro up, and Pinheiro kept lowering her hands. Every time Ribas would land a good shot, Pinheiro would lower her hands and back up, and that set up a beautiful wheel kick for Ribas, and then she was able to finish the fight from there. Got a performance of the night as well, so great for Ribas. And as for Pinheiro, it sucks, because you know the UFC wants her to win. Although they're both, like, fairly promotable. But, I would say I hope she can learn from this loss, but there's no reason to expect that. So, moving on to an actually talented fighter in Peyton Talbot. Got his back taken and controlled for like almost the entirety of the first round, though, by Nick Aguirre. Nick Aguirre was just like a spider monkey on Peyton Talbot. At least for the first round. But Peyton has this really great ability that you can tell a great fighter has, or all great fighters have, is that they can stay composed no matter what. Peyton Talbot is like one of the most nonchalant fighters I've ever seen, and he's what, 25? He was just staying so composed and so calm no matter where the fight was, even when he had his back taken and he was getting threatened with submissions, or when he was in a dominant position. His composure level stayed the same throughout the entire fight. So I think he has the potential to really make a name for himself in the bantamweight division. But he did get controlled for almost the whole first round. And then in the second round, he turned the tide and started to break down Aguirre, which you could see because in the beginning of the third round, Aguirre still wanted more of a rest because he went out to hug Peyton, because I think he could tell Peyton was going to start fast, and Peyton started very fast, ultimately putting away Aguirre with a rear naked choke in like the very beginning of round 3. So overall, great fight, solid performance by Talbot, but pretty boring on the mic, though, I gotta say. He's got to work on his mic skills more than anything if he wants to really make a name for himself. But moving on to the battle of the soys, the soy boy battle. Chase Hooper versus Jordan Leavitt. Actually, pretty fun fight. Chase Hooper goes out there with like a pretty decent combination, and Leavitt decides, I don't want any of that, engages with the clinch, and then they just go back and forth with scrambles and submission attempts. Leavitt landed a really nasty ground and pound shot on Hooper that I thought was going to lead to him getting finished, but Hooper stayed composed and eventually got the rear naked choke on Jordan Leavitt, which is a great thing to have on your resume. Really solid performance by Chase Hooper. He's definitely improving, and he's 24. So I think a lot of people were picking Leavitt because Hooper looks like a prepubescent teenager, which I understand, but he looked pretty, had a pretty decent build on him. He's packing on muscle at lightweight, and he's only 24, so he's improving much more between his fights than Levitt is between his fights. I think that's something people are forgetting. But he showed great jiu-jitsu, and he showed his willingness to engage in the striking in the very beginning, but Levitt just didn't give him an opportunity to do that. Overall, it was a fun jiu-jitsu match between them both, and Hooper showed that he was the better soy boy